Hi there, happy Friday. So today I'm starting a new series of videos which were all about how to check if your design, your redesign is right for you and your home. So today I'm going to start off looking at financial feasibility. So perhaps you've got already a sketch plan, or maybe you've got some options that you're considering and you're making decisions about which changes you're going to make to your home, whether you want to do it now, whether you should wait a bit longer, can you afford it, where is this design going to deliver what you need. So this series is going to look at how to check that the design options that you're looking at are going to be right for you and how to do that. So who am I to help you with this? I'm Jane, I'm a chartered architect and I am the founding director of iarchitect, and I help homeowners to redesign their homes, usually a period property, and to make those homes beautiful, comfortable, characterful homes that also help you to live a lighter lifestyle in terms of sustainability and living lightly on the planet. So today we're going to look at financial feasibility, so how to check that your design is going to fit within your budgetary needs. And so the very first thing that you need to do to check that your project fits within your, ticks all your boxes for you, is to define what your boxes are. So you can't tick a box until you know what that box is. And when it comes to financial, actually, I'm just going to rewind a little bit because I think feasibility is a word that is used within architecture, within construction, and it simply means, is it going to work? Is it achievable? So that's what like a feasibility study is, where you check all the different aspects of the project and make sure that it is going to be achievable. So that's what this series is about, how to check that your project is achievable within your limitations, within your boxes, the boxes that you define. So I'm going to talk about which boxes you need to define and then how you can check that your project meets or doesn't meet your defined boxes, your criteria of what's acceptable and what's not. So the first one, financial, and the box that you need to decide is your budget. So you need to figure out what you can afford. So I'm not going to talk in this video about how to set your budget. I have done other videos about that, and you can check those. But this is, I'm going to assume that you have already decided your budget, or you need to go off and figure out how you need to decide your budget. Check that video out. And then the feasibility part of that, of checking financial feasibility, is to figure out how much it's going to cost to do the project that you are looking to do. So if you're looking at different options, you want to get the different costs for the different options, because if you are like many people, if you've got budget, the cost of the project is one of your high priorities, then you need to make sure that the design that you select, that you move forward, is something that you can afford. There's no real point in designing something and getting planning permission for it and getting builders on board if it's for a project that you actually can't afford, that it doesn't fit within your budget. And it doesn't matter what that budget is. It might be a huge budget, it might be a tiny budget, but you still want to know that what you're designing is going to fit within that budget. So to do that, you need to check how much it's going to cost to do the redesign work, not the actual fees of it, but the building work, and how much it's going to cost for perhaps some different options so that you can select the option that's right for you. So there are several different ways that you can find out your costs. a very finger in the air way that you can go about it, and this perhaps is more suitable for you if budget is not your highest concern. Perhaps you set a budget limit, but actually if you had to, you do have other funds that you could spend on this to get you what you really want. So the budget that you've set is not actually so limited. So in that case, perhaps an outline cost based on square meterage might be acceptable for you, because it doesn't, it just gives you an idea of a rough idea of the ballpark figure that you're looking at, rather than giving you much definition. Then you could, an alternative is to go to a quantity surveyor or a cost estimator, and you would pay them to put together an outline budget cost based on some sketches, or the further you are down the project, the more defined your design has become, then the more defined those costs can be that an estimator or a quantity surveyor could put together for you. And equally, the more detailed costing that they put together, the more it's going to cost you. So if you're looking at sketch designs, then they could put together an outline, broad brush, a stroke cost estimate using some assumptions, but that would be more elemental. So elemental compared to per square meter simply means that where you're looking at per square meter, you're just looking at the plan and you're saying, okay, for this sort of area, then perhaps we're looking at spending, say, £2,200 or something like that per square meter. And you assume that that's going to include for your floor finish, your kitchen fit out, your doors, your windows, everything is included in that cost. And obviously there's a lot of detail that you're missing if you're just going by a square meter cost, but it gives you a rough idea. Whereas a quantity surveyor or a cost estimator, they can put more of an elemental price against it. So for example, they might say, okay, this is the area that you're looking at, so you're going to need this amount of flooring, and then you're looking at these sliding folding doors here, or this window, and that sort of size of door is going to cost this in the region of this. So they're going to pick out the different elements of the design and put a cost against that. So it will be much more useful really than a price per square meter. It's more detailed. But there's a cost associated with getting a quantity surveyor or a cost estimator to do that work for you. And then the third option would be to go to a builder and ask them if they would be happy to put a budget price, an outline price, against a sketch plan, or later on down a project, say if you've got planning permission, then they would be able to put together better costs for you. But if you're just looking at sketch designs, very initial, and I actually recommend doing a feasibility study at very early sketch design stage, because at that point you've not spent so much time, you've not spent so much money in looking at your options, and this is the point where it's best to really start to assess the feasibility of your project, so that you can really start to make the fundamental decisions. And as you're taking your project further forwards, you're basically going to waste less time, less effort, less money in pursuing a project that maybe you're not going to afford, or for some other reason it doesn't suit you. So the third option would be to ask a builder, and generally some builders have got a quantity surveyor who works within their company, so they've got somebody on payroll and that in that case they tend to be much more willing to put together a cost estimate for you. A lot of smaller contractors actually would pay a cost estimator and they would take that risk that they would be paying for it, and you might not come back and give them the work later on. So in that case, sometimes I feel like it's not really very fair to ask lots of builders to give you prices, because especially if they're going out and paying to get those prices, and maybe if you're not really that sure whether you're going ahead with the project or whatever, then I don't think it's very fair to do that. I think it's actually better to pay for a cost estimator. And there are other benefits as well. So there are lots of great contractors, but there are also some contractors who carry out as like sharp practices, if you like. So they'll put a very low cost against it so that you're more likely to go to them and work with them. And then during the construction, they'll add in lots of changes and costs to bump it up. So in that sense, it can be better for you to pay and get the professional to put the price against it for you, and then you're you're not asking for this favor from the contractor, and also you're getting a much more balanced idea of how much it's likely to cost. So but those are your different options for how to do it. And then what you do once you've got your outline costs, then you just simply compare that to your budget. So how much have you got to spend on the project? How much is it expected to cost to build it? And is that yes or is it no? And if it's gonna be within your budget, great, move on. And if it's not going to be within your budget, then it's a time to redesign it, look again, choose cheaper options, figure out alternatives to achieve the same thing, that the same sort of outcome that you want, but within your budget. So it's not all is lost by any means, but it just gives you an idea of how much what you're looking at is going to cost and whether that fits in your budget or not. And then another step that I recommend to my clients is that they then also find out what is likely to be the return on investment for them. Now, this is not always necessary because it depends on your long-term plans. So for example, if you intend to live in your home for the next 20, 30 years, then perhaps the resale value of your home and the increase in value based on the works that you've done in 20 years' time, after you've had 20 years of enjoyment of that property with those changes, then perhaps the return on investment is not so important to you as if you are really looking at this as more of a shorter to mid-term home. So maybe you're only planning to live there for another 3 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, and then you're planning to sell and move on to somewhere else. In that case, the return on investment may become more important to you. And then obviously there are always the uncertain things that can happen in life, divorces happen, people separate, need to sell much sooner than they intended, and obviously you never want to go into a relationship and you never really buy a house thinking, oh, a few years time we're going to be forced to sell this. But having a rough idea of what your return on investment might be if you were in that situation might feel better for you in terms of your risk profile and what your preferences are in that respect. So what you can do is you can speak to your estate agent, perhaps the person that you've bought your home from, because they will know it very well, and show them the sketches and talk through the options of what you're intending to do to your property, and ask them if they could give you an estimate for what the increase in value is likely to be once you've carried out those changes. And that they may be able to do that as well, to give you different increases in value depending on different options that you might choose. And in that case, that might then help you to choose which option you prefer if the return on investment is important to you. But it's always, when it comes to finances, it's always worth bearing in mind that it's not just the cost of it that's important. It's the value of it to you. Hi, Rocio. Nice to see you. And so if the cost of it to you is perhaps less important than your enjoyment of that home and what value that has for you, you know, how important or how much benefit is it going to give you in your life to improve, you know, how is it going to improve you in your life, and what's the value of that? It is worth taking that into account as well when you're assessing the cost of it. So hi, lovely to see you, Rocio. Buenos dias. So that's all I really wanted to say about financial feasibility. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask me about this, please comment below and I'll do my best to come back in and respond to your questions and comments. And I look forward to speaking to you again next Friday. Bye. Adios.